So we are now live. Thank you all so much for coming. Not expecting quite as many of you. My name is Callie. I am one of the crew here. I'm the head DM, which basically translates to I watch a lot of people. And I'm the one sort of most likely to be sort of squinting at your crotch. Not because I'm that kind of weird pervert, just because I do need to check that you're still in your underwear. That's all I'm doing. So today we are talking about paddles. Now, it's one of those things, we do a lot of workshops on floggers and we've done dragon tails, and I don't actually know if we've ever done a paddle one. And I think a lot of people hear paddle and they think, well, that's just an extension of your hand. It's the same sort of techniques. So what do I really need to learn? Okay, well, I found the demo bunny for the day.
Just getting it later.
Anyway, but actually with paddles, there's actually quite a lot of different types of paddle, lots of different materials, and so actually it is worth having a sort of a basic overview and a look to work out which one is going to suit you best. Now, for the most part, I'm going to sort of be talking about the kind of sensation that these give, which is very much on the bottom side. However, tops, you need to pick the right paddle for you as well. So the larger a paddle is, the harder it's going to be to control. And obviously, the heavier a paddle is, the longer it's going to take, the less of a session you're going to be able to do with it, unless you're much stronger than me. Now, don't smile at that. I was talking to Fudge Builds, who assures me that this is a paddle.
That's a small one. There's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, this is the light one. This is the one I could lift. But obviously, something like this is very weighty. Although you're not going to be going sort of all full till it. I mean, some people are into that if that's what you're into. No shade. But obviously, it is going to knock your arms out from the top. And so, going with a paddle that also works for you as much as it works for the bottom is really important. So, yeah. Now, your classic paddle does tend to be leather. Paddles come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. This is kind of like a hairbrush style one, leather. With leather, it depends on the leather itself. It's one of those that's in the middle between sort of stingy and thuddy. You can get leather paddles that are a little bit more chunky, a little bit more padded, which will go more thuddy. And you can get thinner ones that tend to be more stingy. For anyone who hasn't really experienced a lot of impact, the difference between, say, stingy and thuddy is kind of the difference between a slap and punch. Slaps being quite stingy, punches being quite thuddy. So this is always the sort of classic one to start with. Something like this is very good for pretty much any kind of work that you want to do. Paddles can be used any way you can use your hands. So right on bums, backs of legs, thighs. Some people really like that, some people really hate it, so that's entirely up to you. Shoulder blades work really well with a paddle. Obviously, you don't want to be going too hard with it, but that works quite well. And also breasts and chests. Now, if you've got someone who is reasonably well endowed, it's going to feel very, very different to someone who's more muscular up top and someone who is flat up top. So lightly, and obviously making sure face is well clear. You don't want to be scratching. That's all you're doing. But leather, it also gives that very sort of satisfying thwack sort of sound that you associate with spinal pain, you associate with hitting and leather. I will say, I forgot to say this, vegan leather is obviously a thing, but it's also multiple things. Some vegan leather is very much more like actual leather, whereas some of it is actually a lot more like rubber, and some people actually just make toys, call it vegan leather, and it is actually rubber. So if you are someone who doesn't want to use sort of leather products, and it's a good idea to buy your vegan leather products from somewhere that you can try them out, so that you know what kind of quality it is and what kind of sensation. So on the whole, most leather has, if you're buying from reputable retailers like you would if you come to land, it's going to have a very similar feel across the board. Whereas obviously, vegan leather it could be. So just be aware of that. Now, hairbrush size, as I said, it works anywhere on the body because it's still quite small. Now, the smaller the toy is, the more sting it's going to give. The thinner the toy is, the more sting it's going to give. So most leather does tend to be quite thin and quite flexible. With flexible toys, just be aware of bounce back and controlling it. Something like this isn't going to be a problem though, because it's nice and small. However, one thing we do get a lot of at the after party is things where someone's got a bigger paddle. Now this one is designed to basically go over both butt cheeks at once, and which is great, nice, not as much effort as having to hit both, so you can hit them all in one. Drumming is hard, people. You need shortcuts. It's a lot of effort, makes your arms hurt. Anyway, but one thing I do tend to see is obviously you buy your new toys, very excited. This doesn't work well in smaller areas. So trying to get it between the thighs, yes, obviously you can, but it's not going to work quite as well. So if you want something that's going to go over a bigger area, it's a bigger choice. But then this one isn't quite as good on the back because obviously you are going to be risking hitting the spine quite a lot. So having an idea of what sort of play you want to do, what sort of areas you want to hit, or just having a variety in your kit is quite a good one. So that is now along with leather, you can also get suede. Now, suede is a little bit softer and it tends to be a little bit more on the savvy side, although it can still be very stingy. I'm actually a big fan, particularly when you're going with sort of leather and things. You can quite often have paddles that are dual-sided. So this one is leather on one side and suede on the other. This gives you two different sensations all in one toy, which obviously you can either just use and then change up when you get bored of that one, or you can obviously rotate it as much as you want. It depends a little bit on headspace. You know, some people like a very consistent, this is what I'm going to be hit with, this is the feeling I'm going to be getting, and that's what helps them sort of settle down and float away. Whereas others need that kind of change, that kind of, I don't know if the next hit's going to be really hard, I don't know what it's going to feel like, just to sort of keep them from getting too relaxed, basically. So suede, again, very similar to leather, but a lot softer. And also one that you can use more for just sort of trailing across the skin. You can do it with leather, but it's not very interesting. Whereas a lot of suede is a lot softer. The other way, which I have to say Leather Delights upstairs tend to do this an awful lot, is they do some very cute paddles. I'm a fan of glitter, I'm a fan of pink, also a fan of blue, but you know, a good paddle should be fun. However, you've got the leather on one side, but rubber on the other. And not just any rubber, this one's spiky rubber. Which I was about to hit myself on the arm and then I thought, no, I'm not doing that. Basically, rubber is a lot more stingy. And it's a lot nastier. So obviously, it's entirely up to the top how hard they hit. That's not going to do too much. But as you see, it will leave. I don't mark very much, so you won't see much, but it will leave more of a mark a lot faster. And some people, obviously, if you're playing with someone who really likes pain, really likes stinging pain, this one will work really well for them. But obviously, if you're playing with someone who maybe doesn't, then going very gently with this, waiting until you've actually got quite a lot of warm up done. That will help a lot. Because this one is a bit raised though, you can again rub it across the skin. It's not going to be your nice fluffy soft like suede, but it's a different sensation, it's a different texture, which can just sort of, it can bring people out of too much of a rhythm. So if you've got someone who is, you know, happily just like, no, and you're like, no, I need to interrupt this. Hitting them quite hard, but also just training it after the hit, or even just pushing it in a little bit, and just sort of twisting it a little bit. I'm not very nice to my doctors. And also things like when you do have more steam toys, it can make up for if you don't hit that hard. I personally do not hit that hard. I can get a lot of people so red with this.
Yeah. So, what is the best pedal? What is the best pedal for someone that likes to get the face hit?
What's that hit, sorry?
Oh, what is the best? What is the best paddle that you could recommend for anyone that likes to have the face hit or slapped?
Face slapping is a little bit more than I wanted to cover today because it's actually very dangerous. I know. I mean, I've grown up with it and so with everybody constantly. I would probably say something like suede or leather. Obviously, something like this is going to leave marks, and so you're going to have an imprint on your face. Which might be fine while you're playing, but then when you get up and go home, might be hard. So definitely something soft. Nothing. Wood would be a no. Metal would be a no. You've got to be aware of your teeth, basically. So the softest as possible. You can get very fluffy paddles, which don't have to be orange, but they can be orange. I'm sorry, Garfield died.
They're good calls.
You know, and again, with these ones, which again, leather slides tends to rub on the back. Lovely, fluffy, soft, evil rub. But you know, like I would always recommend having a dual-sided paddle so you can play with different sensations at any point. And then you've got one toy that does more than one thing. But fluff, obviously, it's gonna make it a lot more funny. If you are aiming for pain as a top, you're gonna have to put a lot more effort in. However, if you are at a play party and you want to be a bit of a tool and show off, something like this, because you'll be going trying to make, you know, and your bottom will be just like, and everybody going like, oh my god, how are you doing it? I've seen it with the rabbit fur flutters. People are like, oh my god, how are you hitting them so hard? It's like, so you know, if you do a shelf bit, that can be quite a good option for that. And again, you know, you can do nice training processing, hitting, lovely, and then all of a sudden a little bit harder, which when you start on the other side, you do need the right kind of muscles for. But again, you can just hit lightly. So that's kind of leather in a nutshell. Now, there are some other options you can do with leather. One are things like slap paddles and tools. Now, basically, these are going to give you 2 layers to hit with. So you basically get double the impact. Now, tours, this one isn't the most traditional looking, but are often used on more of a disciplinarian scene and often seen as, yeah, it's a school thing, CP, all that sort of idea. So some people really love that as a kink. Some people are like, yeah, no, avoiding that. So
And that's spelled TAWSE.
yes,
That and tours.
yes.
Yeah, he probably had it when he's in school.
No, we had a K. Ah, cool.
I'm not that old. So.
No.
It's all right. I'll take it as well.
A few months ago, he just switches, so you know.
Yeah.
He's on the run to warm and don't for a while. But yeah, these often seem more traditional, but they will give you more pain, a little bit more sting. Again, they tend to come in leather, they tend to come in rubber. I've seen this one in rubber, it's evil. But also, because they're cut as well, you will get the extra additional sort of, it goes mostly together, but you'll still get extra impact with it. I don't actually have stuff, I couldn't find anyone who had one with me today. But you can also get ones that are solid and do the exact same thing. Sometimes they will have like a hole in them or a nice design on them that just gives you. Some of them you can do like imprints on people. They've got the right sort of word or pattern on them. But it does depend. You do have to hit quite hard. And obviously with those, make sure you buy them from someone who knows what they're doing. Because quite often they'll be written the right way on the paddle so you can read it. And then when you pick them, you're like, yes, I finally marked their arse. Oh, what's that say? Hang on, let me just get a mirror. Okay, that's that. Still make sure that it's backwards on the paddle. And then the thing with leather is that you can stitch into leather, which means you can stitch anything onto leather, which means you can start to be very, very mean and go with spikes. Now, I would strongly advise not hitting someone particularly hard with this. This one is from Trust upstairs. They do have a very strict policy of if you bleed on it, you buy it. Just so you're aware. So here we go. This one is a lot more for sensation. You have got the leather on the back, and it is actually quite a hard hitting leather. But you can lightly tap. I'm not going to advise you to hit any harder. There are some people that do very, very much like to be hit harder with these, and are happy to draw blood. That's one, please don't do that aloud. Two, that's on you. Please make sure you read up on the dangers of drawing blood. Very much if someone bleeds on your toy, it becomes their toy. Doesn't matter what it is, it's not worth that. So give it away, burn it, have it on display somewhere. Interesting conversation, please, I suppose. It depends who you live with and who visits you.
Hang on the front door, say I'm tea.
That way might make quite a good door number.
Oh.
So, you know, there are uses when things get covered in blood, but just hope no one picks it up and sees the blood still on it. Maybe clean it. But yeah, but again, like I said, although this looks really, really terrifying, and in some ways that can be enough that it looks terrifying. You might never use this side at all, and you certainly never hit with it. You can always just use this side, but just being like, right, got my paddle, let's play, it's enough.
Like your friend show them that one and put a blindfold on.
Yeah, and then hit with the fluffy thing. Obviously with this, it works very well if you have been hitting someone, scraping it over the skin, just giving it a little bit of a poke. It just helps with the bruising and the pain if you just poke it some more. It does. It's good.
I remember that.
Yeah. You have to learn something in every workshop. So there you go. That's what you've learned today. But yeah, obviously, what's been said before you actually hit someone with one of those. Now, moving on from leather, a very common material is wood. Now, wood, what did you,
Me like.
that sounded like a scare.
I know.
It's actually, this one's not scary, I promise. Wood, again, depending on the thickness of it, will either be more stingy or it'll be more fuzzy. And different woods weigh a lot of difference. So don't just assume wood paddle, they'll be the same. Pick it up, have it play. Generally, this one is from Fudgefields. Generally be prepared to lift when you buy something from Fudgefields. from Fudgeville. Sorry, the paddle. But obviously there's a slight weight difference between the two. Wood is quite unforgiving as a material though. So just be aware you're not going to get the bounce back. It's not going to sort of bend the skin quite as much. It is a lot harder impact. Yeah.
Can you add in, I guess, lubricants like oil or lube to change the impact?
So anything wet will make a different sensation. I did a class about this and I said I've got no idea why, because I don't, and I've had like people on Twitter asking this question, and someone came up to me at the end of the class and he went, "Oh, it's because of this, this, and this," and I was like, "Ah, brilliant, yes." And then I had Prosecco, and then that was a while ago, and then I went to bed. And then I actually don't remember. It's to do with how the molecule of the impact goes through the water, basically.
So will it dampen it or make it worse?
Makes it worse.
Okay.
If you've ever had someone, you've been getting out the shower and you haven't towed yourself off and someone spanks you, it hurts. But as I am a switch, I did instigate a rule in my house where no kink is allowed in the bathroom. So no impact play. Maybe trying to get out because we've got a shower in the bathroom. You're trying to get out and you're getting spanked and you're like, okay, I'm going to end up on the top floor. So yes, I have that rule in my house. However, yes. So water, anything like that is going to change the feel. What I would also say is be careful what you're using, because things like oils are going to damage the leather. You've got leather paddle. Wood, it depends. Most wood should be, well, all wood should be sealed. That's how you don't get splinters. But obviously, it might affect the wood. So there are other types of paddle, plastic, metal, gel contain, both of those, that are absolutely fine with pretty much any fluid. So just be a little bit aware. Leather doesn't like getting quite deep up. So if you're going to do, say, just even water, wood, metal, one of the harder, non-porous sort of materials. But yes, it can very much.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, if you then kind of like started to go towards like aftercare and you're rubbing lotion in, and then you're like, no, actually, this we'll carry on. It's then thinking, actually, it's going to change what you.
Yes, and obviously, when you are going, what I would say with that as well, when you are going through a scene, you'll sort of build up the pain and then you sort of bring it back down and then you're like sort of calm, and you'll need to go in at a lot lower anyway, because although you're not back at the beginning, you are sort of dropped down and actually hitting someone, even sort of there, sort of like that, might actually be too much when you normally fairly feel that. So, but yes, just be a bit aware of it's. I would say yes. Firstly, it will make it hurt a bit more, and secondly, just be aware of whatever you're using isn't going to damage your toys. Like I said, if you do want to keep going, just use your hands. No, we're doing electrical paddles. We're not talking about paddles. So yeah, so wood comes in a lot of different varieties, a lot of different prettinesses, shiny, very waxed. I mean, this one, somebody called this a surfboard. And it was like, it's spearhead. Yeah, it's called spearhead. Whereas this one, because of the type of wood, the nature of it doesn't take a lot, and you get quite a lot of hit with it. So having your bottom with you while you're shopping is always very useful, so that they, pretty much all the stores will let you try before you buy. But otherwise, yeah, there is that. Break it, you bought it. You bleed on it, you bought it. You do other bodily fluids on it, you buy it. Arms are quite good for testing if you can't reach your own bum, which you can do. But yeah, arms are actually quite good. Make sure you're not hitting your elbow or your wrist or anything, but test. But yeah, with wood, it is a very different sensation to metal and to leather. And this one, obviously, as you can see, it's super shiny. It sort of glides across the skin, whereas others which are finished, like that one's not going to glide across the skin quite as easy. So again, if you want to hit someone and pull the toy along, something more waxed is a lot better than something that's less waxed. Yes.
What about the rounded shape versus the flat? Is that
It's with this one because it's not actually. That one's obviously the same width all the way through.
Right.
So that means wherever you hit is going to hit at the exact same. Providing you hit it straight, because a lot of people actually hit like that, but it's going to give you the same feel all the way through. Whereas with this, the part that's getting hit by this bit is going to be a little bit fuzzier. The part that's going to be hit by the outer is going to be a bit thinner and a bit stickier. So it will feel different. And obviously, if you're hitting with the tip, it's going to feel quite different to sort of, you can hear the noise difference. So, yeah, it will, if you haven't got a completely perfectly symmetrical paddle, it will feel different as you hit it into the box. Good question, thank you. That's trust. Some paddles have holes in them. Now, if it is quite a small hole, it's not actually going to affect much. Larger holes will make it a little less intense because the way the air molecules react as the impact happens, obviously they're escaping through the hole. So it does, generally paddles like this aren't quite as intense as if it would be if it was completely solid. So if you are someone who likes impact play but doesn't like a lot of pain, holy paddles are quite good, but they need to be this kind of size. Ones with very small holes will feel different, and you'll feel the fact that there's parts of your bum that aren't getting hit. But generally, they're more good for just getting a pattern on your skin rather than a massive change in the impact. So that is wood. We're going on to the nicer one now. Well, I say nice, it's not. Soft plastics and PVC. Now, I will say with PVC in particular, please make sure you buy it from someone who has sort of rounded the edges of it. PVC can be very sharp. But otherwise, being quite a fluffy material, it's quite a stingy material, particularly if you've got quite thin like this one. And it's a little bit harder to control. So you need to make sure that you are paying attention. That can be very easy to top when you're just sort of like, thinking about what I'm going to do next, and then what is going on with this? It's going everywhere. So making sure you are paying attention and hitting right, but it's also quite a flexible material, so it can be quite forgiving at the same time. But it does also have quite a lot of propensity to wrap around. So if you are doing this across someone's bum or across someone's legs, just be aware you do want to be hitting them further up. Now, different parts are going to feel a bit different. The further down you hit, the more fuzzy it's going to feel compared to the tip. But if you've got that square on the bum cheek, you're going to know where it is. Whereas if you've got this part on the square on the bum cheek, that's going to wrap around and hit them somewhere around the thigh, which they may or may not want. So just be aware when you've got more flexible materials, longer materials, that you need to just be aware. And again, with handles, yes, this does have a bit of a handle on it to make it easy to grip, but there's no reason why you can't hold it at basically any part of the toy. Let's go on to the scary looking one. It's aluminium, it's not heavy.
I think it's way too much. Probably going to go play cricket.
So, metal is a great material for impact play. No one ever believes me until they try it. It is very solid, it is very weighty, and it is very unforgiving. It's generally
Makes it great.
which makes it brilliant. Obviously, it's a bum-only kind of material. But definitely not around the head. Not looking for John for any particular reason. It's just, obviously, the thicker it is, the heavier it's going to be, the more fudgy it will be. This one's quite thin, although you can't exactly put skinny. Obviously, you're not going to want to hit really hard with this. This isn't one to sort of take a run up. I've seen people do that, not with metal. Great thing about metal is it's cold. So actually, you get sort of the heat from the bum because it's getting warm from the impact. And then you've got this nice cold surface. You can just push in, drag across.
Keep running freezer.
Please don't put insertables in the freezer. Insertables, fridge only, guys. Ice water's fine, but if it's going inside someone, you do not want freezer burn. So, but metal toys can go in the freezer. Just, you know, again, be aware who you live with and who might be going to your freezer. Yeah, you know it's something like
I have a dedicated fridge.
But you should say,
I mean, technically, you could get something like this with holes in it and just be like, oh, it's for shot glasses. You freeze it and then you put the shots in. I'm not quite good at making up excuses over the years.
the pizza shovel.
Yeah, I get away with that as well. But yeah, so because it's cold, because it's sunny, and a lot of people do really like thud. And I know a lot of you are a bit nervous about this one. But again, it is pure thud. And the thing with thud is it's a very different kind of sensation. So if you've got someone who loves pain, the chances are they're going to want stinging. Whereas if you've got someone who just enjoys impact but doesn't necessarily enjoy a lot of pain, thuddy tends to be better. And that's not always true for everyone. I will stress that. No one's identical. Thuddy, stinging will give you a lot of surface marks. Thuddy will give you the deep tissue bruising. Something like this, even quite lightly, you'll feel that when you sit down at work the next day. And probably the day after. Depends how hard and how long. Again, this is another one where tops, just be aware, you might want to go to the gym and do some lifting for a session. But again, like I said, this one's actually aluminium. I know some of the ones Fudge does are steel. That's bloody heavy. There's a reason I picked this one up, because this was the only one I was going to carry up the steps. But yeah, metal is, again, it does also have that little bit of a fear factor, or at least an anticipation factor. Because you're like, well, am I still going to be on the spanking bench, or am I in the spanking bench going to be over there after one swing? I mean, try, but generally, let's not go to that level of impact. So that is metal.
So that's another one with two buttons ones.
It is a good one for 2 buttons once. Trust do some smaller metal paddles. If you like the sort of idea of, if you're like, oh, metal sounds fun, but that thing looks terrifying, they do ones that are sort of this size. The other very hard material is a lot less scary. Plastic. Hard plastic. Now, some plastics can be a little bit too thin. They can be a little bit too flimsy. So some very big, cute acrylic paddle with, you know, lots of little detailing on it might not survive a heavy impact session. It would be fine for like a light impact session, but just be aware with plastic, you do want something that is, I mean, this isn't that thick, but this would be fine because it has got the raised edges. But plastic's good in the fact that it's generally, it's on that sort of line between stingy and thuddy. It's got a little bit more weight to it, which pushes it towards thuddy, while still actually being thinner generally, so it's more of a stingy material. But yeah, this one will be fine for heavier impact, but just be aware. I've seen quite a few like quite large ones, they're quite pretty, they do tend to break. So again, if you don't do a lot of heavy impact, that's absolutely fine. If you do, you're going to be replacing each other's car. So maybe go with something a little bit more sturdy. And I think the last thing, well, the last one that I'm going to sort of show, I'm going back to evil. I woke up and chose violence. So, I like people on the side can see.
I've got a mat.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of matte versions of these. Again, this is from Trust. Very, very, very much if you bleed on it, you buy it. Because this will make you bleed. So again, you have still got the backup paddle you can use as a normal paddle. It's very thin, it is wooden, it's very light, so it is very stingy. And then you've got the lotus flowers on them, which for plastic are really sharp.
They're not that evil.
Says the master.
Hats off to you.
She's a masochist.
I can see. I can tell.
Well, if you've got the mat and you lie down on it,
The mats aren't as bad because you've got so many of them.
It's like better now.
It is the whole better nails, how you do it kind of thing. Whereas just a handful on a paddle are going to be a lot more stingy.
Amazon do it in pants as well.
Yes, I'm with that as well. I sit on it on quite a long train journey. Not for the faint-hearted, but an option for the brats out there who they're just like, oh, is that what you've got? Okay, well,
One time I've had that.
yeah, this will shut most brats up. Nothing shuts me up. But like it is super stingy, super sharp. Plastic shouldn't be this sharp. It really shouldn't, but it is. Again, quite good for sensation play, trying it across the skin, bring it down. You're like, I'm going to hit you with this. How you feeling? And then hitting them down the side. Because then you're not even lying. So that's kind of a brief overview of sort of different materials. Now with paddles, most people, the basic technique is the exact same as you would use with your hands. But just be aware, paddles have extra sides. Most people are just going to hit with these sides. If you want something a little bit different, I've got the smaller edge paddle, which actually really changes up the sensation because it's going to put all the weight that's been designed to go into this bit into a lot smaller surface area. It's going to make it a bit more stingy generally and a lot more intense, a lot more concentrated. So, does anyone have any questions about paddles or impact or
A good one.
this rubber. So this one is yes, car tire. It's always red, obviously. Very, very stingy. Obviously, you've got the texture side and more on the plain side. It's generally quite a floppy material, as you can tell, which obviously makes it very nice. Next step up, if you like leather but you want more sting, leather delights do these in sort of big ones, small ones, and handled ones. So
I
It's
tend to
not-
throw those and pick up certain handles.
yeah,
I
it's
find that the flat ones after a while begin to.
so is that still leather? It's rubber. And obviously with this one, because it isn't, although it has got texture to it, it's still going to be stingy. It's not going to be quite as stingy as, say, the studded leather.
If someone sees them, I actually say I've read over my motocross.
Yeah. Someone else?
A good one is a good old fashioned fly squat.
Yeah. Fly spots work quite well.
Not the one with the battery in it there.
Cricket bats.
That's about.
Is there any, yeah, that was going to be
Yeah.
my question. Is there anything that, like, so is that thing of sometimes you choose what's to hand. Is there anything that's like a real big no-no?
Just be aware of what you're using. A lot of people use like things like wooden spoons, spatulas, that sort of thing. What I would say with particularly spatulas these days, if it is completely silicone, that will work in the same way as rubber, it'll be quite stingy, that's absolutely fine. Just be aware, particularly for ones that are like technically turners, who are flipping things over, they will quite often have the either plastic or silicone base, and then they will have metal or plastic that goes into it to hold it together and to give you a bit of structure in it. So be a little bit aware of those because you can break those quite easily, and then you've got a very jaggedy edge that can, even on the hit that breaks, it can be quite dangerous. But things like wooden spoons, anything that's completely silicone, is generally fine. If you're into like real strong ultraviolence, no, please only. The harder you want to hit someone with, the more you need to buy something that is designed to hit someone hard with. But for the vast majority of people, actually things like that are absolutely fine. Hairbrushes is another one. That sort of thing. Yes.
How do you take care of different materials and how do you store paddles?
Okay, so PVC you need to keep away from anything silicone. Other than that, most things are fairly easy. Leather and suede, well, leather needs a sort of a slightly damp cloth just to clean it down. Suede doesn't really like wetness at all, so you do need to be careful with that. Technically, the best way to clean any kind of leather or suede impact toy, whatever it might be, or kink toy, is to take it to dry cleaners. I can understand why most people aren't going to want to do that. Do appreciate that. As long as it's not going to make the material too wet. That will work. I mean, you can obviously put fabric in front of it and steam it that way. Metal is warm soapy water. You can use it pretty much any cleaner of metal. Wood, the same. It depends what it's been varnished with. Just check when you buy. But most have been varnished with sort of a waterproof coating, so they're absolutely fine. But again, you don't want to get wood too wet. And storage is basically make sure you keep anything sharp away from it. Leather will dent if you're not careful. So if you like chuck it in the bottom of your kit bag, it might get scratched. So a little bag for it or separate pockets in your kit bag. But none of it generally needs particularly specialist.
I've heard some people use oil on the leather towels.
I would.
It dries out. Wow.
It can do. I would say talk to the person you buy it from. Some others do need it, some don't. With paddles, so just depends on what treatments and things they're already had. Again, things like saddle soap, anything that you use to clean equestrian equipment always works quite well. And I don't know if that raises more or less questions. Why do you go into an equestrian store? You don't need horse.
Where I buy all my cracks. And then modify them afterwards.
Yes. Yeah, one thing you might find is actually that a lot of props aren't tending to be handmade by people who make impact toys. Leather Delights do make like a hybrid one, which is quite cute. Which does have, the pole, and then you've got slack on the end. Generally, you can't really beat the quality / price of ones you get from equestrian shops. So
You just have to watch the ones you get from the restaurant shop because they're designed for horses. Horses have thicker skins.
they do.
So the ends
Might
of
be a bit
the
general.
materials can be quite savage. So that's why we will get them from here for humans. If you're going to play properly, there's horse ones have like found out using a horse whip. You can cut through things.
Most don't. But if you
It wasn't a human that I cut through. It was just
Depends how much muscle you've got.
have to pass.
Maybe go for the ones designed for children to use. On horses, the ones designed for children. Not get kicked off YouTube. Again.
In terms of the different body types,
Yes.
is there like ones that you'd recommend, like so I'm a bit squishier, but say myself's a bit muscular? Would you kind of is that just the more down to control and placement?
Control, placement, and personal choice. You know, some people really love a lot of pain, some people really don't, some people really love sting. Some people will say, I don't like sting at all, but I really like wooden paddles. And they're like, "Oh, but it's the combination of the sting plus the weight or the feel. So it's completely personal choice on that one.
Then in terms of length, that's just down to control as well.
Length is down to control. The longer it is, the harder it's going to be to control. So if you do want something that's going to go across the bum, obviously go for something a bit longer. But generally, going for something a bit shorter, particularly if you're sort of new and starting out and playing around with it, shorter is a little bit better. Makes it a lot easier to carry around. You're going to events and things with huge red kit bags. But yeah, it's a personal preference as well. But what I would also say is when you have a new toy, yes, give it a practice on your arm, give it a practice on the cushion, swing it, see how it feels in your hands. Go a bit more strong with it, go a bit lighter with it, make sure you've got grip, that sort of thing. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm very new to this. What would you recommend as a toy or something to someone that is a first? I think everyone else is a bit more experienced. Just completely invalid maybe question, but
I would say either a paddle that's got two sides, not necessarily rubber on one side, but like a suede leather or a fluff leather, something like that. Or
I mean they do the orange one if it comes up. So
they do. What else instead? So yeah, so either a paddle that's got the dual sides, you can try some different sensations, or something like a small collar, either leather or like a soft leather or a suede.